This is Alan Jones here at HiFi Buys. Welcome to HiFi Chats. I believe this is number 10, 9. Um, I've lost count at this point, but it's actually number 10. I'm being corrected. So anyway, I have with Dave Gordon with me today with Audio Research. He is the brand ambassador for Audio Research Corporation. And I've known Dave for quite a while. And I remember very well a conversation he and I had in the couch at my old store. I know he remembers that too. And anyway, just a brief overview of what we're going to cover. We're going to get to know Dave a little bit. And at the same time, then we're going to get through some products and kind of some life experiences that he's had as well, mentors and that kind of thing through his time in audio. If you've been in this business at all, you know who Dave is. So, hey, Dave.
Hey, Alan, good to see you.
Nice to see you. And thank you so much for coming on HiFi Chats.
Well, thanks for letting me get out of the house a little bit.
All right. So I want to do a little housekeeping first. I will ask if y'all will out there, please to like and subscribe. Also, Chris, who is kind of blind behind the camera back there, will actually put up a thing for you to be able to ask questions in. So we're going to go through the interview and then do Q&A at the end. If Dave is so kind to offer that time, I'm sure he will. Sure. And let's see, also, if you will, go to hifibuys.com. And if you'll fill out, there's a newsletter there. And you just type in your email address and it'll keep you informed of what we're doing, not only today and also into the future. And we've got a lot of big news coming up and that kind of thing as well. I announced last week that we have an e-commerce site that's very close to getting up and running, and we're really excited about it. Kind of putting some of the final touches on it. And we're going to basically walk with that before we run, and really excited about getting that on board. We've had tremendous support from the manufacturers, so I can't thank them enough. Actually, and I wanted to let you all know, last week on HiFi Chats, my general manager, Chris Doty, actually interviewed me. So if you can tolerate a couple of minutes of me, please feel free to go to YouTube and HiFi Buys page there, and you'll see all the HiFi Chats previously. They're up on recording. Also, next week, we have Michael Frimmer coming on board, so I'm really excited about having him on. He's graciously offered his time to do so. Also want to thank all the first responders out there. You guys are awesome, and shall we say, hope everybody around you treats you well, and at the same time, we know you're treating them well. So thank you very much to all of you. All right, Dave, you ready to go?
Sure am.
All right, let's see. All right, so just kind of what I always like to get to know is a little bit about Dave. So tell us about your family, where you grew up.
I grew up in New York, and actually in the city. So I didn't learn to drive till I was 22, which makes sense. I love mass transit. I live in Minneapolis now, so this is another world. We depend on our cars, and but I grew up in the city, and my grandparents on my father's side emigrated to the U.S. from Russia. So, and they actually started a music school. My uncle was a concert pianist, and he taught at Juilliard for, I don't know, 40 some years.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So I'm the first person in my father's family to never play an instrument. I just play my stereo.
I try to play instruments. I've tried 8 times, 10 times on the guitar. I'm now right in the middle of piano lessons. Yeah. And anyway, I somehow have a hard time getting 2 hands to work together to do the same thing. Yet I can talk and they can both do separate things. I just can't do it on a guitar or a piano.
Well, I wanted to play drums. My mother said, no way. And I said, trumpet. And she went, no. What else? Oh, how about baseball? Okay. That worked for them. And that was good. So I grew up in the city, and then I went to college in Virginia, and realized there's a whole nother world, and met my wife there. And then we moved to Minneapolis.
Where'd you go to school in Virginia?
I went to VMI.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I have a nephew that graduated from there. Good
for him. It's I went there at the best time of all. It was just after the Vietnam War. So short hair was really popular in those days. Yeah. And so that's why I'm still married to my wife. You know, we started going out in college, and she could tolerate short hair. And so we've been together ever since.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So tell us about some hobbies, things you like doing.
Working, photography was always a big hobby for me. I haven't devoted the time for it in too long. That's the worst thing. So it's little gardening, little lawn care, taking care of the dogs, and listening to music.
What dogs do you have?
I have two Papillons, and yeah, little dogs. It means butterfly in French, and so if you hear a bark, one of them is a proud defender of the realm. So that's what. And I have a big cat too, that keeps him in place.
That's awesome. As you know, I got my HiFi this year, and he turns 1 year on July 3rd, my birthday
Right.
as well. So I'm excited about that, and know how we all love our little four-legged friends. So
Okay. Yeah. Can't live without animals.
I don't know what I'd do without them.
No.
Now that I've gotten through the very, very, very difficult puppy phase, and
No,
still
the cleanup phase.
what's that?
The cleanup phase.
Yes, the cleanup phase. That is exactly right. That is exactly right. All right. So, life experiences. Tell us things that have had an impact on who you are.
I actually didn't pay attention to any of the questions you asked before. So, growing up in New York, culturally, I think it was a wonderful place to grow up. It was all types of people around me. And I was introduced to music at an early age, and going to museums, things like that. There was a real appreciation for that. There's always a lot of music in my house. A lot of classical, which I rejected for the most part when I was young. And
Yes.
And the big thing was actually my father, because he was born in 1903. And it was interesting because his perspective on life was so different from everyone else's. He literally walked to school, and it was always in a snowstorm, of course.
Yeah. Long gravel driveway.
Right. That's right. So, but, you know, he saw Teddy Roosevelt when he was a kid, and
Wow.
who was his hero. And, you know, he grew up loving jazz, for example. And his mother, who started the music school, thought jazz was the devil's music. So when I grew up listening to rock, my father was pretty understanding of that, which was really good. My mother thought it was the devil's music, of course,
Yeah.
but it was good. And he always kept an open mind about things, and I've always tried to do that and accept people for who they are. So I think that was the biggest influence. Then going to school, and you know, the discipline of VMI was really good for me. And
That first year at VMI is a tough one.
yeah, kind of. The rat line is not made for having fun. And I almost got kicked out in my first year with too many demerits. And but I've learned to get into the system after that, and life was good. So I was in the photo staff. I was photography editor for the yearbook 1 year, and the newspaper another. And just the other thing is also, when you're contained even in barracks, you have to learn to get along with everyone. And so that's really, really important. And this is a small industry, and you know that we're in now, that I've gravitated towards. And one of the reasons I went to VMI was a small school, and it was, I think that's a good thing. This is a small industry. We all have to get along well together. We're all going after the same purpose. And I'd say there are better ways to make money, but but we're doing what we love, and that's the most important thing.
Well, I think that we talk about passion in this, and how it drives so much, and gives us so much back. And if you work in your passion, you really don't work, even though yes, you have a job, and it comes with those things that come along with the job, but it's just not the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
you get gray hair, and then people start saying, when are you going to retire? And it's like, when I get tired of doing this. And too many friends out there.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't imagine disconnecting from this industry. I mean,
No.
I get asked a lot about too, you know, what are my plans as I go down the road, and, you know, I will do this until I just, you know, I guess it's not fun anymore, and I can't see that day coming.
Right. Right.
I love the people. I love on both sides of it, both manufacturers and the customers, and also the guys I work with. I've got an amazing crew here, actually, who did something very cool for me. I celebrated 25 years, and my guys got me this, which shows basically the original store that I opened at,
Right.
and then what we are today. So anyway, it was pretty cool. 25 years in business, so it was a very, very sweet and dear thing to do.
Yeah,
That's
great.
I mentioned that, David, because you know, Audio Research has a 50th year anniversary, and we're going to get into that here in just a minute.
Sure.
But I wanted to talk a little bit more about, you know, how did you get into this business?
Well, when I got out of school, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I managed a steakhouse for a while, for a few years. And there was a local hi-fi shop, good guys, upper mid-fi. And they said, you know, there's a whole nother world out there. And I was living in Roanoke, Virginia. We took a drive up to Richmond, and I heard acoustats and magnaplaners there. And yeah, and I loved both of those. And then I was also interested in, I had a pair of 3D acoustics loudspeakers, and I had a little NAD 3020 that I was driving with in a big Denon table, and they make really good stuff. And then we drove down to Raleigh and visited Audio Advice, and so I could compare Vandersteen 2Bs with Magnapan 2Bs. And I told Leon, I'll take a pair of 2Bs. And he's like, Vandersteens? I went, no, Magnaplaners. And so I got annoyed with the company because they wouldn't drop ship to me. So they shipped to Leon, they shipped them to me. And that was a life-changing experience. I mean, the first time I ever heard a really good hi-fi was in New York when I was a kid, probably in high school. In fact, I was high school with my best friend, and we walked into some little store and heard a stack of Audio Research with Dahlquist DQ10s.
Wow.
And it was just that, oh my God moment. And it was just, I didn't know it could be that way. And we had like Dynaco and things like that, but this was a whole nother world.
Do you remember the song you listened to?
No, that's the thing. I don't remember what we were listening to. And it wasn't anything that I was really crazy about, but it was just, everything just opened up. And,
wow.
And that was the thing, you know, it was just, music was always very, very important to me. And it was just this open communication. And that stuck with me. I could never afford anything like that in college. And we were living in barracks, so there was never very much room for anything like that. So that's why we went down and heard Vandersteens and Magnaplaners, and my little NAD 3020 drove my Maggies actually quite well. My wife, who was my girlfriend, looked at these and said, what is this? These are my new speakers. And I knew she
got through that, obviously.
Yes, exactly. That's right. And she actually helped put up padding, or she put up the padding in my listening room.
Wow.
And the rear wall was a very small room, and threw her back out doing that. And so I knew she loved me, and that was it. And I used to come home from the restaurant and kiss my wife and scratch the dog and walk in there and listen for 45 minutes. It was my decompression chamber. And I'd walk out and smile, and I was a human being again. And that was the key. And I think that's what it's like for most people. There are two hobbies here. There's equipment and there's music. And the music is what it's about. The equipment's always been a means to an end. And you know, I love the equipment. I bought an Amber Series 70 amp to use with my NAD preamp.
Great amp.
I was surprised I could hear how much better it was than a Hafler that I borrowed and things like that. It was like, just learned to trust my ears. And we lived in Virginia for a couple more years, and then we moved to Minnesota. I quit my job and said, let's move. And we did.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. So
It's always great to hear about people's that first time you just go, wow. I remember mine, remember the gear, remember the song, so on and so forth. I have already said it a few times, so I won't again. But anyway, really, really great experience. Okay, so tell us about a particular piece of music that moves you and why, and how did you find it?
I do stumble on music. That's really it. And probably The Lark Ascending from Rev Vaughan Williams and that piece just speaks to me. And it's just this lovely violin piece, and it just ascends. It's so wonderful. I mean, there are two recordings that really mean a lot to me, and that's one, and the other is Tony Bennett and Bill Evans, and just unaccompanied, and just the duo, and just certain things just strike at you. I mean, I will always love listening to Chicago Transit Authority, CTA, and I'll always love my Cream, and I'll love all my old music. I listen to a little bit of everything, but a couple of pieces just really get to you. And these,
I think it's funny when you're talking about all your old music, but all that old music, every time you put it on, bring back memories of all kinds of crazy things and so on and so forth, depending on how crazy you were. But you end up finding that I know that's been true, and it's been true for everybody that's been on the HiFi chat. So again, thank you for sharing that. So tell us a little bit about mentors in life and business for you.
In life, it's been my father, and also my uncle. My uncle Angelo was very, very close to my mother's brother. And, when I was an adolescent, those two really got me through it. It was my mother and I, we were always banging heads. And so it was, that was a wonderful thing. My mentor in business actually was Wendell at Magnapan. Because after my wife and I moved to Minnesota, I got into retail audio. And you can hear my dogs running around. I actually went to work for Magnapan in '85. And so Wendell became my mentor. And if you know Wendell pretty well, if any of you know him, we're very different people. But it was great schooling for me. And I loved Magnaplaners. I owned them. So I was the best advocate for them, and I worked in customer service and eventually sales, and that's opened the world to me. So that was a wonderful thing.
How long was that stint with Magnapan?
That was '85 to '89.
Okay.
And Wendell had actually been sales manager of Magnapan in the '70s, and Audio Research distributed Magnaplaners for the first 5 years of Magnapan's life, or their existence. And it was Bill Johnson who owned Audio Research, and Jim Winey who developed Magnaplaners. Jim was actually a customer of Bill's. And Bill had a retail store before he started Audio Research. And they became friends. And when Jim came up with Magnaplaners, he loved KLH-9s. And they were incredibly unreliable speakers. They were wonderful when they worked. Jim invented Magnaplaners in his basement when he was an engineer for 3M. And so the companies were very close. Wendell worked for Bill. When the company split, the distribution split, Wendell went to work for Jim. So it was natural. And then I ended up going to work for Audio Research in '89. Well, Terry Dorn, who was our president, I knew him when I was in retail, and he was actually a customer of mine for a while before he went to work for Audio Research. So it's a small world. We all go back.
It is. It's incredibly what I have noticed on the HiFi chats and talking to folks is that basically, and it's true, we all laugh about it at dinners and stuff, how we can't get out of this business even if we wanted to.
No.
So it's just, it's something very endearing that music and the people and the passions are similar. And, there's a lot of driven people in this industry. And it's one of the things I've always been amazed at. And we're actually going to get into some of the drive of your company and why they are what they are as well as we go through this. So thank you very much for sharing that. That's very awesome. So I'm going to do a little housekeeping break here, if you will. If y'all will like and subscribe, please. You'll see where to do that on your screen. Also, if you will, please ask questions. Chris will put a form up there for us to ask questions in. And also, if you don't mind going to hifibuys.com and sign up for our newsletter, it'll keep you informed of what's going on. And we've got a lot of, I've been doing, besides HiFi chats, a whole bunch of videos to kind of prepare for some of the e-commerce stuff that we're getting ready to do, and also to help teach people just some of the basics of audio and how they can get a little better idea of what's going on. And obviously, we feel like we can help. So also next week, we have Michael Frimmer from Analog Planet, and also I believe a senior editor with Stereophile. Also wanted to thank the first responders out there. Appreciate for all the work that you do. And that's anybody that's out there working and trying to supply stuff to, well, not so much the hospitals anymore, because it seems like they're getting a bit of a break. But we certainly appreciate everybody's efforts in getting this thing under control. So Dave, tell us about, we kind of just talked a little bit about it, but tell us about your path to audio research. Obviously, you talked a little bit about from Magnapan to audio research, and I think you kind of came back once or something.
Yeah, well, I went to audio research in '89 and joined the sales team, which was always very small. And my coming there, I knew the U.S. market. I knew virtually all the dealers. And so Terry Dorn, who was sales manager, by my coming over, he was able to actually start to work more with overseas accounts with our distributors. And I was able to take over more of the U.S. accounts. And it was an interesting time. I did it for, I actually left audio research in '92. And I became sales manager of Teal in Lexington, Kentucky. And, the key was I was the first sales manager they ever really hired. And Kathy Gornick ran the company, and it was, I guess, a learning experience. And that's why I went there. I respected the products. I respected the company a lot. And I honestly, I think when I was in my late 20s and 30s, I had the itch more to move. And I thought I could really learn something from Kathy. Because I think they had the best distribution. They and Vanderseek were so similar. And in fact, I used to travel with Richard when I was at Audio Research. And it was kind of funny to go to Teal in '92, because we were both time and phase coherent, first order speakers and competitors. And then the opportunity to come back to Audio Research in '96, 4 years later. So I came back to Audio Research in '96. Was the person who took my place left, and he went to Mobile Fidelity, and he got tired of Minnesota in the winters. He was not a native, and he moved to California. Smart guy. Yeah. And his wife, who was Japanese, did not like the weather at all. So it was a good move for him. And then they made me sales manager for the US. And so that was good. It was, my wife was really happy to come back to Minneapolis. We loved Lexington, but we realized this was our home. And that was, '96. So we're going on 24 years back.
Wow. And you've been with Audio Research ever since?
Ever since, exactly.
Awesome. Awesome. I know you found a home there. So you got to tell me, you have a title as brand ambassador of Audio Research Corporation. So tell me, what is a brand ambassador? And I did not give you this question, so I'm kind of catching you off guard. I have to do it, at least once every HiFi chat. So
everyone asked, what is that? But I was the director of sales for a few years, and Bill sold the company in 2008. when he was 81 years old, which was a good thing. And I was in charge of sales, and then handled that for quite a while, had a sales team under me, and really just stepped aside because as we grew, and we did grow quite a bit from actually 2008 to 2012 and 13, it became more important to do training and do shows. So I train US dealers in the US. They come to Minneapolis, or they did before this year.
Yes.
And I go overseas and train distributors. So I'll go to Thailand and Asia. I'll go to Sweden and Norway and Australia. It's been very interesting. And I do shows really around the world. England, haven't done a show in Australia, but Hong Kong, Taiwan.
I was hoping to see you in Munich this spring, but that just didn't happen. So
no, no.
And I've been up to not your current factory because you all moved since I was last up there, but it was very, very impressive to see how things go together and the attention to detail in each of the products. Kind of how you build a mule to get to a new product and how many different comparisons you make, and I mean it's just it's mind-boggling the amount of detail that goes into building one new product. Right. And then the fact that it's all designed and figured out in that process. How do we not only make this wonderful product, but make it repeatable and repeatable and repeatable? And that just came up again and again and again, meaning that you get the same sound out of the box every time you open one. Right. Because each product gets
right.
Each product, I believe, gets listened to before it leaves the factory.
Right.
So,
well, we build every piece by hand, and we have a long. I don't mean to jump into the middle of this, but we have a long period of development, and we have a new prototype, and actually we build a couple of prototypes because you have to have your reference point where you start, and you build two prototypes, and then you start tweaking. You start changing parts. You start moving things around on the boards. You may change transformers. You may change caps. We design a lot of our own parts too. So we design our own capacitors. We have our own wire and things like that. But the key is that little things go such a long way, and a lot of people have a hard time understanding that, and they think I'll never hear that, and that's you'd be surprised what you can hear. I used to joke in the old apartment building. Someone would buzz from downstairs, and they'd go, "It's me." You knew exactly who it was, and that was the lowest phi possible.
Right.
If you knew that, you could hear a lot of things, and people just don't trust their hearing enough, I think. But what we do is, we use a lot of components that are, very, very fine tolerances. But the key is that, and when you hand insert everything, we hand install every component on every board, and it's quite a process. But for example, with we use FETs or JFETs. I think everyone does, and when we get them in, they all work. If you get 1,000 Toshiba FETs in, they work fine. So that's good, but they're different. Just as we measure tubes, everyone measures tubes. We get certain yields, and we actually grade FETs when they come in, and we may have up to 23 different grades of FETs, and we just know that some grades sound better than others, and we just hope we get a good yield on good sounding FETs. And it depends on the circuit. Sometimes we can use one out of every two. But some circuits we can only use one out of every 5 or one out of every 10. And so suddenly your dollar FET turns to a $10 FET, and it just takes time. But the key is when you have every LS28 preamp going out with the same FETs, the same grade FETs, if someone borrows one from your store, what they buy has to sound the same. Mm-hmm. So we grade FETs, we orient wire inside chassis, because this makes a difference. We make sure we mount parts off boards. If you look at the large capacitors, we mount them off the board, which they sound better. Some people say, you'll never hear that. You'll hear it. And these are things that, it's repeatable. And, we go in, we all listen to music. The engineers all listen to music. And that's a very important thing. They're skeptical. And sometimes, we as audiophiles actually have to prove things to them. It's like all USB cables don't sound the same. And
That is for sure.
they just need to figure out why.
Well, I think one of the things that I've always tried to describe, and I guess has been brought up many times again here before, is that, basically y'all as an individual component, excuse the y'all, do you understand that? Okay. Y'all, actually, you look at a component and think of a whole bunch of little things that add up to one big difference.
Right.
And you end up finding that rarely do you run across that one thing that it makes one huge difference.
Sure.
Because it's, we are pretty advanced in this stuff. I don't know how you keep marching it forward, but it's the same way that we build a system. It's lots of little tiny things that we do with the individual products and the system in the room that make the system sound better. And y'all are doing that on an individual product base, or even then on a circuit board base or a capacitor base or that kind of thing.
Right.
So,
it's cumulative. These little tiny things add up. And you can, in many ways, you can compare it with fine tuning the suspension on an F1 Formula One car. I mean, it's very, very fine tuning. These are things that will make a sonic difference. You start moving two capacitors apart. You take, instead of using one big resistor, you use two smaller resistors. It sounds better. You, again, you raise the caps off the board. When we're listening to capacitors, we may listen, Warren is the one whose our ears may listen to, 10, 15 different versions. And rather than people saying, well, a Teflon cap is the best. Well, it depends, they're mixtures. What we do is we fine tune the way you fine tune a dish. A chef, or really a good cook, will taste something as they're cooking. And they'll go, I need a little more salt, I need a little more basil, sage, whatever it may be. And the key is getting the result you want. With this, we're fine tuning to get the results we want. But you're right about, listening. We have one person listen to every new piece and actually every service piece before it goes out. We have Warren Gale, who, if you go to our website, he of the big beard. And
he's a great guy, interesting dude.
Warren is a very interesting guy. Audio research has always had one person doing all the listening of new pieces and service pieces. His predecessor was Jack Helm, and Warren came on board, I think, around 95 to apprentice with Jack and help engineering. And but he wheels every LS28, you wheel it into the room. Well, first of all, we have bench testing. Whenever something is built, you bench test it. We burn preamps in for 24 hours, amps in for 48 hours. They get cycled on and off. And after 24 or 48 hours, we find bad parts. It's the best way to weed out bad parts. Then you go through a second bench test. And if everything checks out fine, then it gets wheeled down to Warren. Warren puts it in the reference system. He'll warm everything up, and he will listen to it in his big system. And most things get passed, but you never know if he thinks something is noisy or something doesn't sound right. It then goes back to the QA person, whoever did the last bench test, to figure out what's wrong. Right or wrong, or wrong.
One thing I know that I get asked a lot, that sometimes tubes from audio research are a little more expensive than you might get elsewhere. But I'll add the first bit of this in the sense, when I was up there and y'all were, I mean, oh my gosh, those KT racks, KT 150 racks. I don't know how many tubes you burn at a time, but it's got to be a couple of hundred plus. And, anyway, what I learned while I was up there was that basically tubes, you bring them in, and if you just test them right away, it's different than after you burn them in and then test them. And so there's actually a pretty extensive amount of work that audio research does before that tube actually leaves the factory and comes to me.
Right. If you, we take tubes and we measure them out of the box. That's fine. You can measure them. You can put your numbers on them, grade them. We found that if you burn a tube in for about 48 hours, and we have our own fixtures we've made. You've seen them; they're big and they're kind of impressive in a geeky way. We burn tubes in, and we have certain frequencies and certain levels that go through, and then you measure while they're hot after 48 hours. And what we do is we write two numbers on the bottom of the tube, on the base of the tube, and then we put them in on our shelving. And because we've found that if you measure before they're burned in and after, they've changed a lot. And we found 48 hours, 2 days is about the right amount of time. It's surprising. And we had some real issues with tubes back in the late 80s. When a lot of the American manufacturers stopped manufacturing. Philips stopped making tubes in the US. We were using them, we were using GEs. Bill tried to actually buy Philips tube manufacturing, but they wouldn't sell to him because they said, you can buy the manufacturing, you can't buy the engineering for it. And you'll make a lot of tubes and you won't like most of the tubes you make. So there's no point. So we measure the tubes carefully, we grade them, and but again, back in the late 80s, we were having to use tubes from China, from different sources, and some would last longer and some wouldn't last. They should last 2,000 hours, but some would last 500 hours, 700 hours, or 200. We tried burning them in harder or longer, and we found that 48 hours was what always worked.
Awesome.
And so that's it. So you'll see a lot of tubes in stock, and then we match by product. We've found certain numbers work better. If you take the power supply of a reference preamp, we use a 6550, which is essentially an output tube in there, along with a 6H30. Certain numbers work better. So if you order one for your customer, or customer orders one for the power supply, he gets a very specific grade for that. And when we have products, let's say like a pair of reference 750s, 750 SEs now, it takes a pool because they all have to, we want them within a certain group. We need a pool of about 300 tubes to get a set of tubes for a 750.
Wow.
And it's crazy. So we didn't offer, for example, we started putting KT150s into our amps. We didn't put them in the Ref 750 for a long time, just because we needed thousands of tubes in-house to be able to get that set.
Something that comes up in tubes a lot is, hey, this tube I bought, this special thing that I, from 1940s or whatever. And, why didn't audio research use that tube? I know what that answer is, but do you mind just telling folks why that is?
No, not at all. I mean, one thing about our tubes is we only use tubes that we think will be available for a long time.
And why is that?
Because if you buy something now and you want to retube it in 5 years or 10 years, we know we'll have the tubes for it. We've been making products, at this point, we can fix any tube product we've ever made from an SP1 or a dual 100 on. Sometimes it's very hard to find the parts for them, but right now we can fix any tube product. Right. And the key is that those tubes are still being made. And that's the key. Bill never used any really exotic tubes because they'll go out of production.
Right, because if you design something around a tube and then you change the tube, you have a different design.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So basically you need to make sure you're using a tube that you can have a consistent supply on so that you can build a consistent product and deliver a consistent sound. Exactly.
So 6550s, KT120s, KT150s, we think will be around for a long, long time. When you talk about new old stock tubes, typically they're going to be 6922s, 6L6s, 6550s. And frankly, a lot of those are wonderful tubes, but they're new old stock and there's no consistent supply of these things.
Right.
If you want a tube roll, a 6922, 6DJ8, whatever, with your LS2, or your LS22 or anything like that, you can do it. You don't need that many tubes. And it can really improve the sound quality, but it might not.
Right.
And some of them are noisy. They're it's kind of, pardon me, your mileage may vary and you don't know what you're getting. If you happen on a stash of great old tubes, God bless, that's wonderful, enjoy them. It's kind of like the new old stock. Actually, we use 6H30s. And we wouldn't, when they were originally offered to us years ago to put in our products, and we said no because they weren't in production. And those were great tubes, we knew that. When they went back in production, that's when we started to use the 6H30, which we always loved that too. We thought it was a great high current tube, and we knew we could get them for the long term. The thing is, if you can find a new old stock 6H30 from the old Russian military, those are tremendous tubes. But, and they're wonderful, but they're $300.
They've gone up in price a little bit since y'all started doing this.
So, right. So that's why, new old stock tubes can be wonderful. It's just that not great availability.
Yep. I think a lot of people don't understand that sometimes, so that's why I wanted to kind of bring that out. So one of the main reasons audio research is who they are, not what they are.
Who we are is because we never changed. It sounds strange, but having known audio research back in when they were, a 15-year-old company, a 12-year-old company, and who they are now, we really, our mission has not changed. We build things the same way we did 50 years ago. We're still doing things by hand because it sounds better. We tried, we were encouraged to get a wave soldering machine, for example.
I remember seeing it.
Yeah, you saw it.
In the corner.
Right, that was a $100 machine that we didn't use.
Did you move it to the new factory?
No, we sold it before we moved. Actually, we sold it, even before we had the new building picked out.
Okay.
But that was the thing. We listened to wave soldered boards with the parts installed, and they just didn't sound as good. We do this, we get to pick our own solder when we hand solder, and people out there will say, you're crazy. Surface mount is the way to go. And surface mount is the future because the parts are smaller, they're much less expensive. But we don't get to put a part on a board a little farther up. So it's off the board. It has to be a surface mount. And those it just doesn't sound that good.
Also, the parts being closer together when they warm up and things, don't they affect the parts next to them and things along that lines?
You can put them far apart. You can space them if you want to. And look at most every manufacturer out there, and there's some people making wonderful. I mean, look, we have a lot of competitors out there that make wonderful products, and they use wave soldering. We just think it gives us an advantage. It sounds better. And that's really why I don't think things have changed a whole lot in the 50 years. We don't go through phases. We don't get, look, we have made since the beginning preamplifiers and amplifiers. Then we started to branch out and did preamplifier or line stages and phono stages and amplifiers and mono and stereo and things like that. We're not really doing things very differently. Now we're doing, if you look at the development, we're doing DACs, we're doing CD players, things like that. But it's with the same mission as we were doing before. It's the people have changed. I've seen them, since I started there 30 years ago, I mean, a lot of people have retired, unfortunately.
Yep.
And you just need to find people who can take their place. We have a terrific engineer now, Greg Lee, And, you know, he came on board a few years ago when one of our other engineers passed away. They found Greg's application. He tried to come to work for Audio Research 15 years before.
Wow.
And he'd always wanted to do that. And he's making less money, frankly, than he would be at another company, because he worked for Seagate and other big companies. But you're doing what you love. And the key is just finding the right people to work like that. Warren, who's our ears, was the right person to take over for Jack Helm. And, you know, the thing is, we'll need to find someone to take over for Warren, and don't let him.
It's a tough deal finding somebody with ears like that. And, you know, again, it's trained, but, you know, that person has to have a certain skill to step into that world. So,
well, yeah, what it requires is consistency. You know, he can listen consistently from day to day to day. And you know, his hearing, there are some days when it's like, I don't want to listen to anything critically, you know, and he can do that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
I don't know how they do that.
God bless. But he also knows what an SP6B sounds like, you know, or an LS25 or a, you know, a VT100 Mark III. So, because he knows if those don't sound right, they go back to the bench.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key. So that's the ability. And that's what's hardest to find. And it takes
I wanted to follow up a little bit on that. When I was up at the factory, just the amount of space that you had for fixing old stuff.
Right.
And the amount of parts that were in that area. I mean, it was just mind blowing, guys. You know, to come in, it says, you know, I'm not going to let you down. And I love that. So I just want to make sure I made mention of it. I want us to talk a little bit about the history of audio research. There was a company previous to audio research that was kind of the beginning of, to a degree. Do you remember the name of that company?
That was Electronic Industries.
Yes.
And, yes.
Believe it or not, next week I'm going to pick up one of the power amps that actually is from that era.
Really?
So I have a lady I've been talking to for about 3 years, and she sent me an email yesterday when I was coming back from the beach. And anyway, so I'm excited about it. I'll add it to my museum.
That's wonderful. It's well, Bill's retail store. Bill Johnson had a retail store from 1951, I think, until 1968, 69, and it was called Electronic Industries.
Mm-hmm.
And then he always built custom amplifiers. I mean, he sold things like Mac, and he sold H.H. Scott and all the great products. But he always built custom amplifiers for people who just wanted the best they could get. And he sold a lot of electronic industry amplifiers. So you'll see, like, for example, the first Audio Research labeled amplifier was a Dual 100, and there was a Dual 50. And there are Electronic Industries Dual 100s and Dual 50s out there. Mm-hmm. And but what happened, you know, in '68, Bill sold Electronic Industries, the name, to another company called Peplo, and who bought Jansen and a bunch of different companies. They really managed all the companies terribly. And Bill sold all of his patents and everything to them. About a year and a half later, he finally got out of it. He bought all of his patents, everything back, and then he started Audio Research again. And that was the key. And they kept the name Electronic Industries. And in fact, we buy parts still from a company locally called Electronic Industries. They've made.
Is that still from the original?
Yes.
Really?
Derived from the original. So yeah, Bill sold his retail store to another gentleman, but so yeah, you will see products. In fact, at Audio Research, we have an SP1 with Electronic Industries, and we have an SP1 from Audio Research. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Very, very cool. So any more on the history of Audio Research?
Well, you know, one of the things I'd say, you know, Bill was obviously the biggest influence, and when Bill founded the company, the key is that a lot of people think that tube electronics are supposed to people say, oh, you want to sweeten up that system, put in a tube preamp or do this. And they treat tubes like filters. And Bill never believed that. When he founded Audio Research, the only tubes that were being made were Dynaco, and on a kind of a low end. Mac was making their last 275s, but they weren't producing new products. He was really the only audio research or the only tube manufacturer in the U.S. at that time. That was what the company, the foundation was built on. Was Bill knew also was founded. We were founded listening to live music. When I started there, we had tickets to the Minnesota Orchestra. Let's see, I'm trying to think. It was 11th row center. And no, it was actually 13th row center. And in the 11th row center were Jim Winey's seats. But Bill had 4 tickets. He gave them to the employees every week, so we got to hear live music. And it was interesting, it was in 1970, he didn't think solid state sounded like live music. And the thing was, it wasn't that he was looking for this lovely interpretation of what music is like. Bill always believed in very wide bandwidth. He believed in large power supplies. He believed in large scale dynamics. He was a pianist and playing the piano. He just didn't want things to be pleasant to listen to. He wanted to reproduce that experience, which sounds cliched because everyone says that. But the reality is that that's really what we've stuck to the entire time. If you listen, people, you don't buy an Audio Research preamp, frankly, to sweeten up the system.
Agreed.
You do it to play more information. When you put an Audio Research piece in, you should hear more information, more things going on, better dynamics than you've ever heard before. And I've done enough presentations, especially in retail stores around the world. It's been interesting, where people come in to, oh, let me see what these tubes are about. And they're always floored because, well, it doesn't sound the way I expect it to sound. It shouldn't. It should sound like live music. And
I get folks in all the time that, tubes sound this way and solid state sounds all over the map. And I always tell them, no, tubes sound all over the map and solid state sounds all over the map. Choose the best amp. Don't buy tubes or solid state. Just figure out what is the best amp for you.
Right. We design our products actually to work universally, which is another thing. So we design our preamps to work with virtually any amplifier on the market. We design our amplifiers so they're sensitive enough and they're high enough impedance that anything can drive them. Mm-hmm. And because I want everyone to own an all Audio Research system, but that's not the reality. So because there are people who just don't want to put up with the heat that a tube amp puts out. So they're going to buy a solid state amplifier. And, and whether it's a current LS28, Ref 6 SE, or it's an older, LS25 or LS2, it'll work with your Air amplifier, or it'll work with your D'Agostino, or it'll work with your Krell, or whatever it may be out there. We're not going to worry about that, and that's the key. So the other thing is that this is a hobby where people upgrade, and so people don't go out and buy everything all at once. I did that. I mean, I had my little N80 3020, and then I bought that Amber amp, and then I bought a better preamp to replace the NAD. Then I bought a better turntable, and I bought a better cartridge. And I bought better cables, and we've been doing this. I've been doing this since the beginning. So did I always have tube amplifiers in my system? No. Do I love them? Yes. Do I appreciate what they do? Yes. I have tubes as long as I possibly can, and but it's also why I have a sound bar now, because I have a combination audio video system, because I can't run the tubes all the time. Not for TV, for music. That's the important thing. And it's you have people. Let's say you have your old customers. Somebody has they want a better preamp. They could buy an old LS25 and they can work and they go, wow, I just want people to hear tubes. That's the key, because there's a magic. There should be a magic about tubes. I also joke that no rational person wants to buy a tube product. Why would you ever buy anything that's going to require maintenance down the road? You know, it's like if you can plug it in and turn it on and forget about it, that's perfect.
Yes.
Yes, but people buy tubes. The cool factor is not enough to sell a lot of tubes. You have to do it because they're compelling sonically, musically. They have to connect you much closer, and that's the whole point. If you don't do that, there's no point in doing this.
That's the one thing that I have just found with the audio research products during the many years that I've been selling them, and people's history with them and their loyalty to the brand. It's a big deal how much loyalty you have out there, and I think it has a lot to do that. You know, there is a what I would, whether you want to agree or not to this, there is a cultural sound that comes with audio research. And I think what you end up finding is I've always had people sit in front of it and go, wow, it's like, you know, it's presence, it's dynamic, it has bass, people kind of expect it to be kind of this rolled off, soft kind of thing. And it's just not that.
No.
It's texturally rich. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest thing that I think people get from it, is that it really seems to bring about just a real fullness to, you know, the music that's put through it.
Right. Yeah, you have to. Yeah, there should be that magic, and that's what it's all about.
We like the magic.
We like the magic.
It's that magic pixie dust. They just sprinkle it in up the factory. And
Let me say one more thing though, also about the amplifiers, because people think a tube amplifier won't drive a lot of speakers. Audio research, especially with the D150. The Dual 150 from the 70s. That was the amplifier of the decade for the absolute sound. It was just a remarkable product because it was a big tube amplifier. But we design even our smallest tube amps now to be able to drive any speaker. You know, I love Vandersteens. They're easy loads to drive. That's not a problem. You know, we design our little integrated amplifier of the old VSI 60, the old VSI 55, to drive a pair of Wilson Sashas or wall puppies before that, you know, where the impedance is dropping down below 2 ohms.
Well, I've got a VT80 SE here driving Sasha Dawes, and that's just, you know, a great combination.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It was, we had a reviewer come in once who wanted to listen to a VSI 60 driving, just to write a little review. He wrote for CNET, and he was no audiophile. He came in, we played our big system with a pair of Wilson Maxes in our big room, and we had our reference amplifiers and reference anniversary preamp, and he listened. He said, "That's great." He said, "Okay, let's you know, bring in some small speakers, listen to the VSI 60." No. Took the VSI 60, put it down in between the speakers, took the CD player, which we were using, put it next to the integrated amp, because we didn't have long single-ended cables, and we played the same system again. He was like, what? But that's the point. You need to be able to play anything with this product. So we played all of his same music over again, and you can hear exactly the VSI 60 in that time versus the big reference system. And the thing was, it didn't sound different. The reference does things better. Dynamics are better. There's more information. But the VSI 60 was simply a smaller interpretation of what the big reference products were doing. And you know, we're very adamant about that. So that's why people don't have to worry about buying one of our tube amps. You know, it's just they'll drive anything.
I have not found anything they won't drive yet.
Right. Good.
I'll concur with that, and I've been at it a little while. So how have the products evolved as the world has evolved?
They haven't. No, they've gotten better. That really is the only thing. It's
circuit boards have gotten better. Capacitors.
Well, actually, yeah, things have to evolve as far as that goes. Parts are a lot better than they used to be. We, at one point, were using an uncoated board. If you look at old audio research products, they had these brown boards. And that material we thought was the best sounding material, period. The problem was that suppliers said, we were down to one supplier worldwide for that. And
Wow.
they said, we can't guarantee it long term. So we went on a search, and with circuit boards, we had they were covered, which is good. It's fine. It protects from dust. It prevents from, it slows down environmental damage. If you live by the ocean, you may have an issue. But it took us a year and a half before we found that, and we played with traces and things like that. Now, for example, with Evolution, the newest 160 series amplifiers, we're using a 4-layer circuit board. Now, you say, big deal. All digital products are using at least a 4-layer board, but people aren't doing it in high-end audio. And what it did was it allowed us to use a separate ground plane in there. And we just wanted to experiment with that. And when you can establish a separate ground plane, you can really lay out the circuitry very differently. And we were able to get everything to sound a lot better. And with the separate ground plane, it actually brought noise levels down to like nothing. And what I do a lot, and you should do in the store sometimes, you have a Ref 6 SE and you have a Ref 160S or Ref 160Ms, and just turn your source off. Mute the preamp, turn that volume up to 103. And obviously it's a balance system. Turn it up to 103 and take it out of mute. And I usually do that, and most salespeople just jump about 3 feet because they expect some noise. But the point is that it's quiet. And that's the other thing we've always believed in with tubes. There should never be a background noise. Music is competing against noise always. And it's kind of, I make a regular analogy, and it's like looking at the stars. If you want to see the stars, go out to the country. There's no noise, light pollution.
Yep.
And everything, Milky Way just opens up, around you. It's the
That's
same
a great
thing.
analogy.
Thank you. It's the same thing with music. You're playing against a black background. If that background is noisy, you're losing information, and actually you're losing dynamics. And so we're trying to get that background to be truly black. So, and what that means is, if you take a 160M, I'm guessing it's as quiet as any amplifier in your store.
Yes.
And that's the point. That's the other misconception people have about too. We've always been quiet, but so our boards have gotten better. We play with different trace materials every so often. The wiring gets better. If you take the reference 6 to the reference 6 SE upgrade, people are shocked.
Yeah, it's big.
It's a big difference.
Yes.
Change wires. And actually we're using different dielectrics than we were in similar wires a couple of years ago. We're using different capacitors we've been working with, and the changes, that's all the changes are wires and capacitors. Now there are like 30 some changes in there, and it takes a full day to do the installation, but it's just parts. So yeah, you're right.
That 6 SE is an amazing, we actually sold our 6, and that gentleman's waiting for the SE upgrade. We went ahead and ordered a new SE for the store. What's so impressive about that thing is you look inside there and you look at, some 100, 150, 200 watt amps. You've got more capacitance and more transformer in there than some of those amplifiers. And it shows what prowess that product has over those tiny signals that it deals with.
Right. Yeah, we had an issue years ago with a reviewer who got a reference preamp, and he said he just got it. He said it won't come out of mute. Our eyes got big. We said, okay, we got another one out of production, overnighted it. He said, this one won't come out of mute. we actually should have asked more questions the first day. It's like, do you have this plugged into something? Yeah, I had it plugged into someone's expensive, esoteric, power line device. It's like, plug it directly in the wall. It came out of mute. Yeah, because a Ref 6, that you're right, that power supply is big. It draws like an amplifier. And, but that's what gives you the dynamics, that impact. It's really, really important.
Yep. Remarkable preamp. Actually, we had another one that we sold this week, and gentleman had another brand I won't name, but I mean, just blown away by what Audio Research did against some pretty formidable product out there. So anyway, it got him from unhappy to happy. And so we are still waiting on that from you, just so you know.
Okay.
All right, so so we talked a little bit about noise, and it's come up in so much discussion, and over the last 2-3 years of my world, it's what I've been working on a lot with HRS and the stuff Garth Powell has designed, and it came up with D'Agostino, and it's come up with just really everybody here. So we talked a little bit about it, but what is noise, and kind of how do your products, what are you doing in your products to reduce that noise floor? And I'm not talking about this background hiss.
Right. Sure.
So please.
It's we're trying to control the fields. You really are trying. You're moving the layout of parts. You're using metals as shields. We use, for example, like Moo Metal. If you take the reference Phono 3 or the Phono 3 SE now, if you look inside, there's a little transformer at the base, and there's a little piece of metal that's actually angled in there. And we get calls regularly. It's like, what do I do? It moved in shipment. No, actually what we do is on the bench, we actually move the shield around until we get the lowest noise. And then we glue it in place there, and they don't move around. But you're doing whatever you can like that. Again, the ground planes are really important.
So the circuit board was a big changer in that regard.
Oh yeah, circuit board was a big thing. If you we don't want people even to move the wires around inside the chassis, because all these things make a difference. We actually have laid them out for years, and we still use it. We have a Litz wire that we designed ourselves years ago that's very, very stiff. And pardon me, Litz is a real pain to work with because it is stiff, and you have to use a super hot solder pot Litz wire or individual wires each have their own insulation on there. It will be clear, you can't tell, but you have to burn that insulation off. But we pre-cut to 1/4-inch lengths just so we can get the wire to fit there exactly right. We don't want we don't want a 1/2 inch of excess so it'll move over to the side, things like that. We use different gauges of wire for sonics. If you look in a phono section, in fact, you'll see 3 different gauges of a particular custom wire that we use. Wow. We have made for us. So little things go a long way, and we're measuring these things on the bench, and that's where maybe the final tuning is.
Well, I will tell you, the fine ladies that solder all those things in there, I don't know how they keep their head in a day, but anyway, I was very, very impressed with them and their enthusiasm towards what they do. I mean, it was not fake. So anyway, they were very, very, very proud of what they do. We
have to hire people that have really steady hands who don't drink too much.
Don't come in the morning.
Exactly.
All right. So why is it that your products and your company enjoy such a huge group of loyal customers? I mean, I've experienced that here at the store. So tell us why that is.
They appreciate, look, people buy your products because they sound good. And when they realize that you're there to support them and you're there to service them for years, you don't forget about these people. It was, because somebody buys something on the internet, you buy a used piece, you don't forget about these people. You still talk to them. When they call up, you answer and provide as much assistance as you possibly can. we
They're
try to
going
make
to
our
be
product.
they're going to be your next 6SE owner.
Well, that's the whole thing. Exactly. I mean, there are people I've met, a lot of people who said, look, I have this or I have that. One day I aspire to own a new body research piece. And that's wonderful. That's all you can do. You know, it's with cars, you can buy you can buy your used exotic car or whatever, or your CPO and things like that. With audio, things get passed down. There are all those SP3s out there for the most part are being used. Things like that. We had actually a time when people were really angry with us a few years ago, and our CFO ran the company. Our president had retired, and our CFO ran us for a while, and we stopped treating people as well as they needed to be treated, and that was difficult. Fortunately, he's gone. I'm still here. And we've gotten back to the way we do things. You know, there was always someone there to answer the phone. And there was always someone there to work on products. You know, it's a matter of performance and support. And it's just a big combination of those things. It's hard to put together, you know, to really, I have a hard time explaining it. It's just the way you have to be. And
y'all definitely have a culture that was set in and still remains today, and I think that speaks volumes. You know, regardless of whether people were angry at one point or another, it shows today, at least to me, that you know y'all are on that same track, and we're absolutely seeing the kind of products and service and that kind of thing. Moving that factory was not fun either. I know.
No, that was very, very.
We went through a couple of long, you know, repairs during that time as well. But you know, hey, people have to move a factory, and unfortunately, if you saw what was moved and what was before and where they're going to, I certainly understand why it took a little time to get that together.
Sure. No, it was very painful. I've gone through 2 company moves. Actually, they joke that I left at Audio Research 92 because they moved a month later to the Audio move, and I did not want to be there for that.
They just have a statue of you out there.
I helped box enough things up, and that I did my part, and that was it.
Well, you know, I have pictures of you and Richard here at the Expona with y'all loading up my truck, and with you with a hand truck with a bunch of boxes in it and that kind of thing. You've always been a trooper every time that we've been together.
You know, that's part of it. It's we all have to do this together. It's you can't be dilettantes. It's you want to make sure it's done. And look, we're all in this together, and that's the whole point.
You know, you were funny. You brought up the anniversary preamp. I was I don't know, I guess a few years in with audio research at that time, and we sold more of those than I ever would have expected.
Sure.
It was really cool. I love the way it ticked down from 40 to 0 or 1 to 40. I can't.
Right.
Which way did it go? I can't remember.
1970, 71, 72, and they hit 2010. It came out of mute.
Yeah. Anyway, that was an awesome preamp. I still have actually we've taken one in on trade, and the others are still out in the field with those guys. So they're loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great product. Great product. All right. So you have several levels of product. Let's start with the Foundation series, LS28 and SE update. Tell us what's involved in that.
SE updates are always just better parts, and that's same thing with the Ref 6, the Ref Phone 03 SE. It's what we try to do is, and this actually goes back to how we design products and where they all stand next to each other. When we went from the LS 27 to the 28, we wanted the 28, for example, to sound as good as, or have trade-offs with, like a Reference 5. I think probably a Reference 5 SE.
Yep, you accomplished that.
Right. Yeah, and the power supply isn't quite as big, but there are other things about it that are better. So, you know, there are things about the SE that make it as good as the equivalent reference product, the last one. the last generation. You want to bring it into that ballpark.
Because you're using your knowledge from that product on down, and that's,
Right.
you know, it makes it an easier transition in that regard. It's wonderful to have that knowledge of all those years of manufacturing.
Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly. No, that's the key. And you know what we will not do an SE, but if we change a model and make it so extensive, then we will call it, give it a new number, things like that. So I spoke with a gentleman today in Australia who has a 5 SE, and he's like, is there any way to make it a 6? No. There's a way to make a 6 into an SE or 6 SE, but not, you know, you can't go generationally like that. But an LS28
Tell him
SE,
to call me. I'll figure it out for him.
yeah, I'm sure you will.
All right. So you have the PH9, which we're using here at the store, and I actually have a PH9 at home with my new Brinkmann turntable, and so I'm enjoying it quite well. And so the PH9 and LS28 share some things, but at the same time, the PH9 has tube rectification.
Right, because we could. And that's really what it is. It's a matter of what you can fit into a chassis and what you can charge, essentially.
Right.
You know, with the unfortunate reality is we have to design to a price point. So,
well, at least within the Foundation series, yes.
Right. Yes. Well, you know, for the PH9 is the only piece that we actually have a tube power supply in that series, and that's, you know, what we could do that given what we were working with the phono stage. The phono stage, the board and everything was simpler, and we were able to do this and just bring the performance up a whole lot. So
I'll tell you, pretty extraordinary phono stage within its price range. Absolutely. Right. I know the customers that we have out with them and that kind of thing, and myself included, I give it great kudos. Sure. Would I want a Ref 3 SE? Yes. Yeah.
Well, you know, at home right now, I mean, I have an LS28 and I have a VT80 SE, and I have a Ref CD9 SE, not an SE, but I have a Ref CD9. So that's great. And people say, don't you have to have that? No, this is great.
By the way, just a reminder, I know people that can help you get an SE update. So you,
okay. Can they help me get in line for it?
Yeah. I know after y'all were out of during this COVID-19 thing, you were not open for, I think, several weeks.
We were not open for, I'm trying to think, probably about almost 2 months. Yeah, about 7 or 8 weeks.
So when was the last time you've been at the office?
Well, I did an event in Seattle the first week of March, and which was a tremendous event. It was a dealer event. It was 2 nights, and it was the coronavirus epicenter of the U.S. at that time. But I was in good company because Bill Pugh was there, Daryl Wilson, Dan D'Agostino. So we were all there and came back. I was in the office the next week. I got a cold the next week, which was not COVID-19, but
Scare the daylights out of you, though.
Said, there's no way in hell you're coming back in the office. They were freaked out by that. So I missed the last like 2 weeks before they closed. That was funny. Wow. No, it wasn't funny. It was, I'd like to go back. I've been there. I sneaked in for 20 minutes so I can grab my monitor. Well, I have a big 27-inch monitor at work, and we are actually working on a 50th anniversary book, and I'm proofing that. So a few of us are. So I was going blind trying to proof everything on my 13-inch screen.
Wow. So this book sounds exciting.
It's going to be. It's our, as I said, it's our 50th anniversary book. They've the person who's writing it had been after us for years and been after Bill for years to write a book, and he just never would do it. But 50 is a really big one for us. So,
well, I know I was sharing my 25 years with you. I feel like a chump for 50 there. That's
keep eating well and you'll last. You'll make
it. What an amazing accomplishment. Seriously, congrats to all of your research. It's a big deal. 50 years in business is, especially when everybody else at the time when he's coming out with tube gear, everybody else is getting rid of their tube gear and going solid state.
Right.
and kind of against the world. So he's my guy. I get it.
Well, that's the thing with these entrepreneurs, whether it's Bill Johnson or it's Dan D'Agostino or it's Jim Teal or Richard Vanderstein. I mean, these are strong-willed, stubborn people.
Yep.
And they believe in this, and by damn, they're gonna do it. And that's the thing. I've met a lot of people who built really great products who are no longer in business. Those products were wonderful, but it takes a lot of different things together to make it work. And we've been lucky because Bill actually loosened the reins a bit and let other people really get involved. He brought other engineers in. He ran the show, but he brought other people in, and that's the only way to succeed. And that's why we were able to make the transition from Bill when he finally did retire.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that happens in that is, if you give up, if you're trying to kind of run the entire company, you basically keep it whatever size it is, and it can't grow if you're not willing to let loose of things. Lord, I know I've learned that myself.
Right.
So,
you also have to be realistic about how big you can get. It's, the best thing we never did was a home theater processor. Well, I mean, when I came back in the 90s, in 96, there were people saying, if you don't do a home theater processor, because home theater was so popular, you are toast. And I remember at least 3 people using that word, you're toast. And, the thing is that, yes, we could have a company do a lot of the design work. We're going to do the analog section, make sure it sounds really good. But the damn things were so buggy. And what you need is, we had one person, a lot of them out there remember him, Leonard Gustafson, answering the phones. And it's one thing to answer questions about a 2-channel preamp and troubleshooting that or an amplifier, trying to troubleshoot home theater processors and things like that. And with them changing all the time, no, we didn't do it, fortunately. So
welcome to our world. We're not just helping people with one, but all the different ones that we sell, including receivers and that kind of thing. So I certainly understand that. HDMI was the beautiful, lovely thing that came into our industry that was the savior of the world, and that was how it was marketed. And unfortunately, it wasn't that way the first few years with it. We're now starting to see some of the advantages of it. There still are some strange and weird incompatibility issues that come up, but we deal with them as best we can and move on. So,
no, absolutely.
But that's kind of what digital is. I know y'all love being in the analog world, but you have DACs out and that kind of thing. So tell me a little bit about the DAC 9, which is in the Foundation series as well.
Well, the DAC 9 is in many ways our most advanced DAC, and it'll do DSD and things like that. What people forget about a DAC is that there are 2 parts. People are always surprised about how good our digital is, and the reason is that we have a good digital engineer, a good programmer, but we also have great analog in there, because you're taking that digital signal and you're outputting analog. So if you take a DAC 9, it's essentially like an LS preamplifier in the analog stage. And so it's not, if you look at the DAC 8 that we had years ago, the DAC 8 was like a solid state audio research preamp. The DAC 9 is like a tube LS preamplifier. That's one of the reasons it's so good. So we can do the decoding. The only thing we had a problem with was simply streaming with that. We fixed that. It was a USB issue with Linux, which we did not speak Linux very well.
Right.
But otherwise, we're using chips that we really love. We actually we're ahead of the curve. We came out with some things like doing dual chips per channel, so we were actually able to do balanced digital signals, and and we were able to really spend a lot of time with obviously with noise, but with dynamics, and we let people play around a little bit as far as the slopes and things like that if they want, but it's a really, really strong product to get them, because it's really one of our analog products with a terrific, digital front end on there. And we have an FPGA USB card. So if there are updates there, we can reprogram the card. We learned that the hard way, because the first DACs we made, it was like, this is a closed system. It's a closed chassis.
Right.
We learned, with the DAC 9, it's like, you have to have some modularity, and you have to have updatability, and it can't hurt. It's not like it has to go back to the factory for a 4-week upgrade, things like that. So
yep,
we're very happy.
We play a DCS network bridge into the DAC 9 here, and it really sounds absolutely amazing. And that's actually a pretty good combination.
Yeah, a lot of our dealers use DCS. It's wonderful products, US and around the world. So.
Yep, agreed. Okay, so let me get a little housekeeping here, and then we're going to run into kind of our last little section of this. Are you holding out okay?
I'm fine. I just want to get some more water. That's all.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. I have mine here.
Okay.
All right, so do a little housekeeping, please. Please like and subscribe. You'll see on your screen there. Also, if you will, ask questions. Chris Doty will put up a thing there on how you do that. Also, if you will, please go to hifibuys.com and sign up for the newsletter. That'll keep you informed of what's going on. Also, to let you know, next week we have Michael Frimmer from the Analog Planet, and also technical editor. I don't remember his title as Stereophile, but Michael will kill me for that. But next week we'll get it straightened out. Sorry, Michael. Also, just want to thank the first responders out there in the world, and the folks that are actually working out there to help us be able to move on. We have actually here at HiFi Buys been open now for, I think this is going on our 3rd week. We have been open 11 to 4. And on the phones from 9 in the morning until about 7 p.m. So it's actually worked out pretty well. And we do see some folks coming back in the store, which it's so nice to see people. So thank you. I promise you we're being safe down here doing our social distancing. And we also have lots of this advanced hand sanitizer and all kinds of gloves and masks and that kind of thing as well. If you walk in, you should expect, if you're in a mask, we will absolutely be wearing one. And so please know that this is a place that we will not be part of the problem. Okay. Before we go further in the product range, tell me what sets audio research apart from the crowd of the products in tube world.
We think we do everything better. No.
I was going to tell you, be nice, Dave.
Yeah. No. Look, there are a lot of great products out there, and we think, especially relative to tubes, there's a dynamic life that our products have that really bring things alive. I hear a lot of products that just kind of, they're really good textually, they're really good, they're kind of boring. Intellectually they're good, and they can move you emotionally, but again, that dynamic life, really the wide bandwidth. We think our transformers we design our own transformers and have them made for us. And that was one of the big things in the very beginning. And it's the very important thing now is that, you take a reference phono stage and it's flat to like 300K, 300,000 hertz. We don't believe in this narrow bandwidth or bandwidth limiting whatsoever. A Ref 6 is flat down to half a hertz. So not only does it reach that far down, but with the big power supplies, and there's a sense of immediacy and life. And we play a very, very big stage. I remember reading a competitor, actually, customer wrote on there that, the audio research that I had before played an unnaturally large stage. And it's like, wait a minute, the key is we're not limiting it. It's going to be as big as your speakers and your setup allow.
Yep.
And there should be no constraint whatsoever. So dynamics, I think resolution and resolution, a lot of people say when you say it's higher resolution, more detail, more transparent, they get this kind of, well, I don't know if I like that, because they associate higher resolution or more detail with bright.
Right.
No, that's absolutely wrong. Tonality is very, very different. And tonally, it needs to be neutral, obviously. But actually, resolution, the higher the resolution, the better the product gets, the finer the grain structure, and actually the smoother it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the old days, I grew up with film, and if you took films, you had Tri-X, which was ASA 400, and you had Plus X and Pan X, and as the ASA dropped, sensitivity dropped, the grain structure got finer and finer, and that's really important. If you look at digital photography, you know, what you want is, you don't want that noise, you want that fine grain structure. I think our products really have that resolving capability, but with a texture, but with a fine grain that is just pretty remarkable. And there has to be, is what really makes everything very, very natural sounding.
I agree with you. I think that, you know, the harmonically rich, you know, however it is described, everybody has their own language and kind of their own perception of what that language is and so on. But there's no doubt that every time I seem to get the system farther and farther up the ladder, my brain relaxes more in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Right.
means it's lesser noise, it's a fuller, richer, more natural signal. Right. And, you know, it just has a certain feel that allows you to really, really get into it. So,
right. Yeah.
Anyway,
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So, we kind of talked about this. Can you explain what it is about vacuum tubes that makes them so musically satisfying? I guess we probably pretty well covered that, haven't we?
Yeah, I think so. It's one of our engineers said there's what tubes can do is they can really create, he called it a cushion of air around instruments. And it's not just when we listen, and imaging is one thing, that's fine. But I think Harry Pearson years ago said it was like paper ships on a paper sea, where it's almost like an arcade gallery where you have the little rabbits and you have the little targets, but you know, they're an eighth of an inch thin. You know, you don't, what you want is, don't just want that voice, you want the body behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want to understand that there's a full face there, not just a flat pair of lips.
Right.
And that's, I think, what tubes can really do. There's a texture, there's a fullness, not a rounding, not a smoothing, an unnatural smoothing or coloration, but there's that air around instruments, around voices, that just make things very real.
Yep. You believe tubes have that ability to replicate that
Right.
from the original event and have a better ability to do so.
Right. You just have to make sure everything is right around them, correct around them to really exploit that.
Yep. Very good. Very good. So you recently came out with 2 new amplifiers. One of the monoblocks I have here on the floor. They're kind of not so new now, I guess.
Yeah.
My time domain is just gone. But anyway, you have the Ref 160 monos and the stereo, the Ref 160S. Tell us about those amplifiers.
That was a pretty big, to me, it was a revolutionary step, more than evolutionary. Yep. I mean, it was just a matter of, they did so many things so much better. This was a lot of fun in the development. It was very frustrating because we got so far, but it's the first reference amplifiers, first of all, to have our own auto bias circuit. The first one we ever put that in was a VT80. And then we put it finally in the reference amplifiers. And what's really wonderful about it is that we were just never really happy with the sound of auto bias circuits before. You have to be very, very careful. They can really change the sound quite a bit. You'd say, well, they shouldn't, but they do. And one of our engineers came up with this, and the engineer who'd been with us for 38 years. And so we love the way this auto bias circuit works. And we found it worked really great in the VT80, so we put it in the reference amplifiers. We actually fused everything. We fused the fuses, or fused the other tubes. And yeah, well, actually, you know, we resisted that because it's not usually the best way to make it sound good. And we just worked on that from the beginning, and we found a circuit that we really like that works really well with those fuses. So the key is that you're going to have to get your reading glasses out to look if you blow a fuse. But we, you know, we have a little indicator on the front, so you know if something is out. And it's just, but it happens so infrequently. And
we've had no issues with the pairs we've sold, or ours here on the floor as well. They've been just exceptional.
No, absolutely. And that auto bias also, we're getting, I think we're finding longer tube life because they're always working within a certain bias range, but it also changes according to line voltage, which is really important. Which the problem, that one of the problems in this country is that you could run anywhere from 110 to 128 volts, depends how close you are to the power station. In this, we have that new 4-layer board. Again, that really let us cut down on the amount of wiring, really get that noise level down. We don't have fewer wires acting as antenna to pick up noise. Yep. We put a lot of new wires in there. We worked on some new designs, new capacitors, new transformers. We put actually a singleted input in there for the first time, which, all reference amplifiers were just balanced only. So yep. If you had a singleted preamp, you just could not use it. It will not work. You can't just put in an adapter in there.
Yeah, that's a question I get asked a lot. Can we put it in an adapter?
No.
And so I was very thankful when y'all started doing that, because it means that somebody that has a single-headed preamp can actually use a reference amplifier. Right. There's actually some pretty darn good preamps out there with even made by you guys with single-headed outs. So right. Anyway, it's nice to be able to get those in the mix. Something I love as a store owner, I love the ability that we can hot swap your products.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about what that is and why.
Well, we try to make our products as bulletproof as possible. So, for example, we don't turn products off in the sound room. Warren never does when he changes connections. So you can pull an XLR. Now, if you're going to change the cables between a preamp and an amp, you want to pull the XLRs from the amplifier first, then the preamp. Plug them into the preamp, then the amp, but you don't need to turn it off. That's the thing. Another cable manufacturer who uses our stuff, when they're doing ABs, they said, well, we'd rather not use audio research in that case because we can't do it quickly. You don't need to turn anything off. The transformers are all designed so that you're not going to pass anything really nasty on. If all of our RCAs will connect ground before hot and disconnect hot before ground, that's really important. We just don't worry about it. You can run a signal into an amplifier and not have any speaker cables hooked up, and you won't have any problem. The transformers is going to be pretty bulletproof.
I remember when I first heard that I had to worry about saturating transformers by not having a load hooked up, and I was just like, wow. And having a conversation with you many years ago about this was it was like, what? Huh? Wow.
Really? Huh?
Awesome.
I know.
It's not like a delicate baby.
Right. Well, with a tube amplifier, and you're right, the key with a tube amp is that if you do turn it off, you really need to wait about 5 minutes before you turn it back on. Because you want the power supply to dissipate. And so, in fact, with the reference amplifiers, if you turn them off and turn them back on too quickly, there's a hot start lockout. That's what we call it. Yep. A little red light will come on and won't let you.
No can do.
No can do, exactly. So, but you don't have to really worry about that. We understand that stuff happens at home. People, and stuff happens in the store. You unplug that speaker and you.
We've all had that. Oh, that was stupid moment.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Hopefully it's not a phono cartridge that costs a lot.
I actually ruined a phono cartridge plugging I don't know, it was a cable manufacturer that had a power supply, and they had the same connector for the power supply and for the cartridge input. And so I hooked it up to the power supply and fried the cartridge in a nanosecond. So anyway, it was a $2,000 lesson for the day. But stuff like that happens. All right. So those amplifiers, I don't think I
also say one more thing about features is we put in the ultralinear triode operation. And that's something that some people forget about. We did a series of amplifiers in the 80s called the Classic series, the Classic 60, Classic 120, and they were triode only. And with triode, you're running at half the power. It's technically a little purer way of running the tube, but you lose half the power. And we just think there are trade-offs. It depends on the speaker, depends on listening taste. We have, when we're at a show, we always run ultralinear, which is going to be the maximum power. And we think that gives you the best dynamics and sense of life. There's a purity with the triode operation that is wonderful, that some people prefer. I prefer ultralinear for almost all the time. But, I listen probably at louder levels. I don't listen at blow your back levels anymore, but triode is very different. It's going to be half the power, and it's just, going to give you, and you can switch it on the fly. So you could listen A, B at, back and forth. So that was a very big thing.
Awesome. So we've talked, one of my questions was, how is it that you continue to break the sound barriers with your new products? I liked my sound barriers thing. I was pretty cool on that. But I think we've kind of discussed that as better products come along, you're able to use them. As technology comes along, you look at all these different things to figure out where do we get these differences little by little, and we add them all up, and then bam, you have a whole nother level of product out there. And
right. Well, the other thing is, look, phono cartridges get better.
Yep.
And tables get better, and arms get better, and digital gets better. And the better the source material gets, the more we have to work with.
Yep.
And suddenly you go, okay, how can we make this better? We think this is the weakest link. So.
What's funny is I used to have a couple of demo tracks that I used, and as my systems have come along farther and farther in the store, I no longer can use those because they don't have enough resolution to really show me what I can get out of the system. So anyway, great point. You have the Ref 6 SE and the Phono 3 SE that kind of sit in the reference line. Right. And then you have a couple of products that are north of that, which basically are the flagship Ref 10 and the Ref 10 Phono. So when you go from the Ref 6 to or Ref 6 SE to the Ref 10, you go from a single box chassis to a double box. So you have the power supply, then you have an umbilical cord that basically goes to the tube circuit. Right. Tell us what it is about those products that make them at the stature they are.
Well, it's dual mono from the power plug on. So what it also means is you have double the power supply. So you have the full power supply for one channel and the other. There's only so much you can fit in one box. When you can do the power supply separately, you're doubling the power supply. So it's drawing even more. It's giving you even greater dynamics and life. And that's the first thing. You're doubling the tube complement. Each channel has the full tube complement versus the Ref 10 is really more of a doubling of the reference 5 SE.
Okay.
And so we had 4 tubes in the Ref 5 circuit, and we have 8 tubes in the Ref 10. So we were using 4 tubes per channel. The Ref 6 actually cuts it. So it has 6 tubes. One of the reasons it got a lot better than the Ref 5. But you have double the power supply, double the tubes, even better quality capacitors, things like that in there. And when you can isolate the channels fully like that, it just plays even a bigger stage. And what you do is you know, everyone for the most part says, and we were like this, is it's diminishing returns. How much better does it get to do this? And unfortunately, it gets a lot better.
It does.
For better or for worse, uh, because it needs to be a slap you in the face change. If you have, and the key is if you have the room and the speakers and the system to work with, I had a dealer sitting next to me for training. We were going up from the 28 to the 6 to the 10, and we were listening to the same thing all along. And literally, like 3 notes into it, he turns to me and says, "Slap your mama." It was just like, it was so funny. And it was like, because you just expect, okay, it'll be incrementally better. But it was like a big difference.
But it
And
proves that, you know, you're using similar circuits and that kind of thing. And, you know, by dividing things up, we're reducing noise, getting more control over the signal, that type of thing. So it's always been mesmerizing to me. You know, I have a basically complete ref system with the ref 160 monos with the 7s.
Right.
And each time we've done those upgrades with your products in that room with them, they've always just keep going and going. And I again, could not be happier with working with your company in that room. It's amazing. So we have 2 systems at the store, one that has the full foundation series with a pair of Wilson Sasha DAWs, and also in the 7s room with the sub 9s and that kind of thing. We have the Ref 160 monos, as well as a Ref 3 SE and a Ref 6 SE phono stage and preamp. So anyway, invite everybody to come down and take a listen when you like. Okay, so when you see high-end systems, you know, at the shows, we not doing that right now, but when we could, and when we can again, you always see a lot of audio research at the shows. Tell us why that is. Why the manufacturers or other manufacturers are asking for your gear or showing it with you.
we just think it's well, first of all, we designed it to be fairly universal, to work with a variety of speakers, and people know our sound. I mean, they want to put their best foot forward, and so we appreciate their choosing audio research. And it's also a sound that people know. For the most part, you know, if you're going around, you're going to be more familiar with audio research's sound. The people coming in, the dealers, we probably have the largest network of any tube manufacturer, and so for dealers, for consumers, there's a familiarity with it, and I really think there's a neutrality that we offer.
Are y'all the largest tube company out there?
I'm sure we are in the U.S. I don't know how we are relatively in the world, because there are some pretty big companies.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so one of the things that y'all changed in your tubes was going to 6/830s, and that was kind of a revolutionary thing for your company.
Right.
And I believe the KT150s has kind of done the same thing. Tell us why the KT150.
The 6550 was always our default tube, and then the company actually making our 6550s came out with the KT120. And you know, when people think the tubes are going away, think about it. There was a brand new output tube that this company came out with. Now, we are, you know, not arrogant enough to believe it's all because of high-end audio. The reality is musicians love tubes. So they're using a lot of tubes and a lot of guitar amplifiers. The KT120 is almost a drop-in replacement for the 6550, higher current, better sounding tube on balance. But then the same company came out with the KT150, and they put everything into this they possibly could. And unfortunately, it's about twice our cost as a KT120. And I think that's because they can charge it, because it's just that much better. That tube just gives you, again, a much finer grain structure, really plays really, really large. Resolution is better. It just does everything better, we think.
I've been amazed at, you know, when you take a small 80 watt per channel amplifier and
Right.
those, I mean, it is unbelievable, the prowess that tube has on anything I play it on. And I think it's helped y'all as far as in the, the saying my amps will play anything. And I don't mean about input impedances or anything. It's just that speaker or that tube just seems to grab a hold of things and
It does. And it also lasts a lot longer. It has about a 3,000 hour lifespan. So,
awesome.
So a KT120, pardon me, or a or a 6550 KT880 will be about 2,000 hours. This is 3. So for people listening to a lot of music, that's probably about 5 or 6 years of listening.
Mm-hmm.
So, tube changes don't have to occur very often.
Nope. I've been very impressed with, again, the reliability and that kind of thing from all the audio research product we've had on the floor as of late. So in this crazy world right now, how have you had to adjust your workflow?
Well, I'm working from home.
And you're normally working from an airport bag or that kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah, I had, I don't know, a lot of miles last year, probably 130,000 miles. This year, it's quiet. It was a trip to Seattle. I think that's my first and last trip of the year. So, I just get to talk to dealers and actually consumers more often. So I will field questions, and I feel a little bit less involved because they're working on a new product at work, and they said one of the engineers said, "Boy, it sounds great. You should come in and listen to it." No, you can't do that, can you? We're just not allowed in the office there.
So before we get to the Q&As, tell us a little bit about any new products coming down the line. I realize you may not be able to divulge, but if you have anything to share with us, please do.
Well, we are working on on a smaller version of the Ref 160S. We're working on a Ref 80S.
Awesome.
And, so it'll be about the same size chassis as a Ref 160M, your monoblock. And it will have the dual meters in the front, the ghost meters like the 160S stereo.
Those amps are so beautiful. Just
yeah, it's
great looking products.
And so that's coming out this actually late summer, and then we're also working on some less expensive products.
Oh.
And so the next one should be out. I'm not sure. I give up. I can't go in and ask the engineers how they're doing today. But there's going to be a little integrated amplifier. It'll be at least 50 watts per channel. And but it will have some options: optional phono section, optional DAC built in. It'll have headphone amp or headphone output from the amp, and tube preamp section and tube amplifier. And,
awesome.
Yeah. And so
I know I was down in Key West with your group about, I don't know what, I think it was probably 8 years ago.
God, yeah.
And I remember this came up. And so anyway, I'm glad that we're starting to see some fruition from that, because, I think that anytime we can get somebody in audio research at a more reasonable level, it opens up worlds for them to be able to explore. Sure. And I think it's a smart move in your company to get in that regard.
Well, thank you. We miss having more entry-level product, and we're aware of as aware of this as anyone, that the prices keep creeping up because it just costs a lot of money to make these things by hand. So,
well, I will tell you, that's what I noticed when I was in the factory was, how do you bring the cost down? Because you still got to buy transformers, you still got to make a case. You still have to put in tubes, you have to have the circuits, you have to design, you have to do the same kind of build that you do to the other things. And so how in the world do you bring the cost down?
Right.
I don't know what that answer is, and I don't need you probably to give it to me, but
well, that's our mission though. So that's the next thing I can talk about is we will have a little integrated amplifier, and I think we'll have a new series off that.
Cool. Look forward to that. Should we see that, do you think, this year, or probably be getting them next?
Yeah, I think we'll see the integrated this year.
Okay, awesome. So we got great things coming out from audio research.
Right.
Hey guys, So if y'all will, please, we want to make sure that Dave asks every question that you have. So please, there's a little form up there for you to ask questions. So please go ahead and get that done. And we're going to do a quick little bit of housekeeping, which is I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe. Also, again, we just talked about the questions. Also, if you will, go to hifibuys.com and sign up for the newsletter. Also, to let you know that next week we'll have Michael Frimmer here with the Analog Planet, and also I believe is a some type of editor with Stereophile magazine. And I know it's a senior kind of thing. So again, sorry for messing that up, Michael, but I'll be better next week.
If you don't mind, before we go on,
yes,
I'm going to take a bathroom break.
All right, you go for that.
Okay. Good.
All right, I'll see you in just a minute. All right. So while Dave takes a break with us, anyway, I got sunglasses for my little doggy. Anyway, I guys just got back from the beach. I went down Friday evening, and well, it was great to get away for a few days. And anyway, had to get back yesterday so I could get the HiFi Chats questions out to Dave Gordon. And anyway, what a great guy. I've known this guy for a long time. I remember us sitting down on the couch at my old store and shall we say us having a long talk. This was when audio research was available here in Atlanta. And I basically just told Dave, this is my line and it's not going to be anybody else's. It's time. And so anyway, it was about 24 hours after that, he decided to give us the line. And so anyway, we're very, very, very excited to be carrying auto research and being a long-term dealer for them. We believe it very important to stay with the lines that we carry and to, maximize our ability with each one of them as we spend more and more time with them. So anyway, that's kind of how we feel on that end. Let's see. And last week, if y'all did not look, Chris Doty, my general manager, actually interviewed me on HiFi Chats. Also, all the other HiFi Chats are up on YouTube. So if you just go to type in YouTube, HiFi Buys, it'll come up and you'll see all the things. We've actually got quite a few more videos that are going to be uploaded to there as well. That are some of them very short explanations of particular things, particular kinds of products. I wouldn't say that they are deeply technical. Because that kind of comes in a different form where the people that want that information can end up getting it. So it looks like we have Dave back here. And so we're going to go ahead and start with some questions. Are you ready, Dave?
I'm ready, Alan.
By the way, I can't thank you again enough for spending your time with us today.
My pleasure.
So we have Jeff H. What is your favorite piece of gear you guys made or still make and why? It's a tough question. I mean,
yeah, it really is. It really is. Probably my favorite piece of current gear is the 160S. I love that amplifier, and it's very, very actually very, very close to the Ref 160M in performance, and so I love that. I don't know, the Ref's Phono 3 SE is even that much better than the 6 was to the SE. It's maybe because it's dealing with a low level. Of the old products, probably the SP3. I mean, that is just such a wonderful product. And that's what made the company. And I love the design, and we're still actually doing updates these days to that product.
That is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And we get one in, at least one every month from the US or around the world, and they're still out there. So
it makes you so proud of your heritage. You know, it's the one thing I remember going into like a VW dealership where they always have like the old cars, but completely redone.
Right.
Kind of the rafters up above you. And it's just cool to see that people are doing these things to the older versions and how much use a product that's 30, 40 years,
right.
old. So anyway, that's pretty amazing. Really cool stuff. Jeff, I hope that answers your question. I appreciate it. Please ask another if you like. So this question is from Jesse L.
Okay.
So, Dave, what is your favorite beer?
Well, it's of course Pliny, and So Pliny the Elder, but also, let's see, Toppling Goliath. They make some wonderful beers, and I don't know. I like too many beers. It's I think I know who this guy is.
So, so Jesse, you get to stump the judge.
Yeah, actually, my favorite beer is whichever one I'm having with Jesse.
That's a great one.
Good.
All right. So thank you, Jesse. All right. Ron W. Hey, Ron, how are you, man? What's the status of the wait time for the Ref 6 upgrade to SE?
I don't know.
It's pretty big now. It was.
It's going to be. It's right. Well, the thing was right. We just lost. Didn't start doing it until we came back. So right now it's probably going to be 4 months.
Yep. Ron, what's the best thing to do is to give us a buzz, and let's get it in the computer so that we can schedule it with those guys, because they are scheduling now. So and basically what we can do is get you in the schedule, and then they let us know when they have time for it. And then what you end up doing is get the unit ready to go at that time. Okay.
Right. Yeah. The queue is getting longer.
So I have a Sullivan S. Audio research preamp specs show 20K ohms minimum load and 200 picofarad maximum capacitance. Does this imply my amp should have minimum 20K input impedance?
That actually was, no. Actually, that is wrong. We have spec'd that out forever and ever. And I've talked with our engineer, and actually a 10K is about the minimum you want to load it at, and not 20K. And there's a formula for figuring that out. It's not an issue with any commonly available amplifier. There are some 10K amplifiers. The key is really when you're running, let's say, something like a JL Audio woofer with it, or somebody. And the reason I say I picked them is because they're very popular and their impedances are typically low. So the key is just get a hold of service at audioresearch.com and let us know what the input impedance is of the sub and your amplifier. We can tell you whether it's going to be workable. It's going to work fine. The only question is when you start dropping down to like 10K or below 10K, you just start to, the sound just isn't quite as good.
Right.
And that's really what it comes down to. If you take our amplifiers are typically 100K on up, 100,000 ohms on up. A lot of other amplifiers out there are probably going to be about 50K. And so it's really not a problem.
Okay. Awesome. Sullivan, I hope that helps you. And hey, Sullivan, good buddy of mine.
Okay.
Listen, that's all the questions that we have. Dave, thank you so much for being here and answering our questions for the folks out there. This has been HiFi Chats number 10. And remember that next week will be Michael Frimmer on HiFi Chats number 11. And Dave, I can't thank you enough for being here. Again, your company and yourself, needless to say, are kind of at the height of my world here at the store. Love working with you guys. And I remember the day that I told you this has got to be my line. And we worked it out about a day or two after that. And I can't thank you enough for you seeing the right way to go.
my pleasure. It's great talking with you. And I'm really glad that Ed Scruggs is with you again, or with you now. And he was my dealer before you were. So, it's been great. It's been a lot of fun. The great thing about this industry is we get to deal with people we enjoy working with, and people who are friends. This is not just a matter of how much of this are you going to sell for us. It's a matter of, working together. And I'd like to make sure you tell everyone that trust your dealer. A lot of people, you have to appreciate what you have. There are not a lot of great dealers in the country left. They're going away faster than anything else. And I went from retail to manufacturing, and suddenly when I made that transition, there were people who were taking the same things I'd said a month or 2 months or 6 months earlier and taking this gospel, because I suddenly worked for a manufacturer. A good dealer is looking out for your short-term and your long-term interests.
Yep.
That's the key. he carries different lines because people like different things. A good dealer will help you figure out the best products right now. And if you want to upgrade over in the future, he's going to help you long term. He's going to make sure everything works together. The other thing is, people call us up and say, what would you recommend? Look, I can't sit with you and listen. That's the problem. You take, your speaker selection, Vandersteen, Wilson, you have a variety. They are different products. They're all wonderful products. And you can sit down with Alan or one of his guys and say, I like this better for these reasons, or these. Everyone says, I listen loud or I listen quietly, whatever. Your version of loud or quiet is different from everyone else's. Yep. My wife's in the same room. She will attest that what I consider moderate, she considers very loud. So, listen with these guys and play your music, and you really get a feel. And that's something that a lot of people don't hear often enough. And trust a dealer. The only way he'll stay in business is to keep your long-term business going and have you refer friends to him. So,
yep. So relationship matters.
Exactly.
Yep.
So,
thank you very much for that, Dave. The thing I always tell everybody is, we are in between the manufacturer and the customer, and what we want is great relationships with our manufacturers and great relationships with our customers. And for the 25 years I've been in business, that's all I've done is basically establish relationships and really work with those. And they are the most important part of the business. It's not the money. It's basically the relationships and the things that we learn from people that walk in our door. Every piece of music that I have ever had in my head, I've learned from someone else. Mm-hmm. And everything I've learned in this business, I've talked to people like Dave and Richard and all the others in the industry and friends and things along that lines, because, with all of those thoughts, I get to have my own kind of thought on what's going on out there. And we're here to help you in any way that we can. And we've proven that over 25 years, and that won't change. So, Dave, I'm going to ask you to hang in with me just a second after we end this. But you guys, thank you again so much. This has been HiFi Chats number 10 with Dave Gordon, brand ambassador for audio research. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Alan.